Detective Michael Rodriguez stood in the doorway of the Thompson house and looked around. Everything was perfect, too perfect. The white walls were clean. The family photos were lined up in straight rows. Even the flowers in the front yard looked like someone had measured the space between each one. Rebecca Thompson had been missing for 3 days now. Her husband David called the police exactly 24 hours after she did not come home. He said she went on a business trip to Phoenix and never returned. The neighbors all said the same thing about the Thompsons. They were the perfect American family. David Thompson sat on the couch in his living room. His hands were folded in his lap. His hair was combed neatly, his shirt was pressed and clean. But Detective Rodriguez had been a cop for 15 years. He knew how to read people. Something about David felt wrong. The house was quiet, except for the sound of children playing, upstairs. Emma was 8 years old and Jake was 6. They did not seem to understand that their mother was gone. David had told them that Mommy went away for work and would be back soon. Detective Rodriguez walked around the living room. He picked up a family photo from the table. Rebecca Thompson was a pretty woman with brown hair and green eyes. She was smiling in the picture, but something about her eyes looked sad. David had his arm around her shoulders. The children were sitting in front of them. Everyone looked happy. But Rodriguez could not shake the feeling that something was not right. David cleared his throat and started talking again. He spoke slowly and carefully like he had practiced what to say. He told Rodriguez that Rebecca worked for a big marketing company downtown. She traveled for work sometimes, but never for more than 2 days. When she did not call him on Tuesday night, he got worried. When she did not come home Wednesday, he called her office. They said she was not supposed to be in Phoenix. There was no business trip. Rodriguez wrote everything down in his notebook. David's story was simple and clear, maybe too simple. The detective had seen many missing person cases. Usually the husband was either very upset and talking too much or very quiet and not talking at all. David was somewhere in between. He answered every question but never said more than he needed to. The detective asked to see Rebecca's things. David showed him to their bedroom upstairs. The room was as neat as the rest of the house. The bed was made perfectly. Rebecca's clothes were still in the closet. Her purse was on the dresser, but her wallet was gone. David said she always carried her wallet with her. Rodriguez opened the dresser drawers. Rebecca's jewelry was still there. Her wedding ring was in a small box on top of the dresser. Rodriguez picked it up and looked at it. Why would a woman leave her wedding ring at home if she was going on a business trip? He asked David about the ring. David looked surprised, like he had not noticed it was there. He said Rebecca sometimes took off her ring when she washed dishes or cleaned the house. Maybe she forgot to put it back on before she left. The detective went back downstairs and sat across from David. He asked more questions about Rebecca's job and her friends. David said she did not have many close friends. She was busy with work and taking care of the children. She did not go out much without him. Rodriguez asked about their marriage. Were they happy together? Did they fight about anything? David said they were very happy. They had been married for 10 years. Like any couple, they had small disagreements, but nothing serious. He loved his wife very much and just wanted her to come home safe. The neighbors came over while Rodriguez was still at the house. Mrs. Patterson from next door brought a casserole dish for David and the children. She was an older woman who had lived on the street for 20 years. She said the Thompsons were wonderful people. Rebecca was always friendly and helpful. She watched Mrs. Patterson's cat when she went out of town. David kept their yard looking nice and always waved when he saw her. Another neighbor named Tom Miller came by to ask if there was anything he could do to help. Tom lived across the street with his wife, Jenny. He said David and Rebecca seemed like they had a great marriage. They had barbecues in their backyard during the summer and invited everyone on the street. Their children were well-behaved and polite. Rodriguez listened to all the neighbors talk about how perfect the Thompson family was. Everyone said the same things. Rebecca was a good mother and wife. David was a hard-working man who loved his family. They never heard any fighting or arguing from the house. They never saw anything strange or unusual. But Detective Rodriguez had learned not to trust perfect families. In his experience, the families that looked perfect on the outside often had the biggest problems on the inside. People worked very hard to hide their secrets, especially from their neighbors. As the sun started to set, Rodriguez told David he would be back tomorrow with more questions. He gave David his business card and told him to call if Rebecca came home, or if he remembered anything else that might help find her. Rodriguez sat in his police car outside the Thompson house for a few minutes before driving away. He looked at his notes from the day. David's story was clean and simple, maybe too clean. The house was too perfect. The neighbors were too quick to praise the family, and there was something about the way David answered questions that bothered him. The detective had seen many missing person cases. Some people just decided to leave their old life behind and start over somewhere new. Some people had accidents and could not get home. Some people were taken against their will, and some people never left home at all. Rodriguez started his car and drove back to the police station. He had a lot of work to do. He needed to check Rebecca's credit cards and phone records. He needed to talk to people at her job. He needed to find out if the Thompson family was really as perfect as everyone said they were. Something told him this case was going to be different from the others. Something told him that before it was over, he would learn that nothing about the Thompson family was what it seemed to be. Detective Rodriguez arrived at the police station early the next morning. He had not slept well. Something about David Thompson kept bothering him. The man seemed too calm for someone whose wife was missing. Rodriguez had seen many worried husbands over the years. They usually could not sit still. They asked the same questions over and over. They called the police every few hours to check if there was any news. David was different. Rodriguez started by calling Rebecca's bank. He needed to see if she had used her credit cards or taken out any money. The bank manager was helpful, but the information was surprising. Rebecca had 3 different bank accounts. David only knew about 2 of them. The secret account had been opened 6 months ago. Rebecca had been moving small amounts of money into it every few weeks. She was careful not to move too much at one time. By the time she disappeared, she had saved almost $8,000. This was not the kind of thing a happy wife did. Rodriguez called Rebecca's workplace next. The marketing company was in a tall building downtown. Her boss was a woman named Janet Harris. Janet seemed genuinely worried about Rebecca. She said Rebecca was a good worker who never missed days without calling first. Janet told Rodriguez something interesting. Rebecca had been asking a lot of questions about her health, insurance lately. She wanted to know if her coverage would continue if she left the company. She also asked about getting copies of her employment records. Janet thought Rebecca might be looking for a new job. Rodriguez asked to speak to Rebecca's closest friend at work. Janet pointed him to Maria Santos, who worked in the same department. Maria was a young woman with dark hair who looked nervous when Rodriguez introduced himself. Maria did not want to talk at first. She said she did not want to get Rebecca in trouble, but Rodriguez explained that Rebecca was missing, and any information might help find her. Finally, Maria agreed to talk, but she wanted to do it in private. They went to a small coffee shop across the street from the office building. Maria ordered a large coffee and stirred it with shaking hands. She told Rodriguez that Rebecca had been very unhappy at home. She did not talk about it much, but Maria could tell something was wrong. 3 weeks ago, Rebecca came to work with bruises on her arms. She wore long sleeves even though it was a hot day. When Maria asked about the bruises, Rebecca said she fell down the stairs at home. But Maria did not believe her. The bruises looked like finger marks. Maria pulled out her phone and showed Rodriguez some photos. Rebecca had sent them to her as proof of what was happening. The pictures showed dark purple, bruises on Rebecca's arms and shoulders. There was also a photo of a bruise on her back that looked like someone had pushed her hard. Rodriguez asked why Rebecca did not call the police. Maria said Rebecca was afraid. David had told her that no one would believe her. He said he was a respected member of the community, and she was just an unhappy wife looking for attention. Rebecca was also worried about losing her children if there was a custody battle. Maria told Rodriguez something else that was important. Rebecca had been seeing a lawyer. She did not tell Maria the lawyer's name, but she had been meeting with him for several weeks. Rebecca was trying to figure out how to divorce David without losing everything. Rodriguez wrote down everything Maria told him. When they finished talking, he gave her his card and asked her to call if she remembered anything else. Maria promised to help in any way she could. Rodriguez went back to the police station and started making phone calls to divorce lawyers in the city. The third lawyer he called was named Robert Chen. The name sounded familiar, but Rodriguez could not remember why. When he asked if Rebecca Thompson had been a client, the lawyer was quiet for a long time. Finally, Robert Chen said he could not discuss his clients without a court order, but he agreed to meet with Rodriguez the next day. Rodriguez had a feeling this lawyer knew something important about Rebecca's disappearance. That afternoon, Rodriguez decided to take another look at David Thompson. This time, he would ask harder questions. He drove back to the Thompson house and knocked on the front door. David answered, wearing the same neat clothes as the day before. Rodriguez asked David to come to the police station to answer more questions. David seemed surprised but agreed to come. He called his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, to watch the children and followed Rodriguez in his own car. At the police station, Rodriguez sat across from David in a small room. He started by asking the same questions as before. David gave the same answers. Then Rodriguez asked about Rebecca's secret bank account. David's face changed. The calm expression was gone. He looked angry and confused at the same time. He said he did not know about any secret account. Why would Rebecca hide money from him? They shared everything. Rodriguez asked about the bruises on Rebecca's arms. David became very quiet. He stared at the table for a long time before answering. He said Rebecca bruised easily. She was clumsy and always bumping into things. Sometimes when they argued, he might grab her arm to get her attention, but he never hurt her on purpose. Rodriguez did not believe him. David's story was starting to fall apart. The perfect husband was showing his true face. But Rodriguez needed more evidence before he could arrest anyone. He told David he could go home, but not to leave town. David nodded and left the police station quickly. Rodriguez watched him through the window as he got in his car. David sat there for several minutes before driving away. He looked like a man with a lot to think about. Rodriguez knew he was getting closer to the truth. Rebecca Thompson was not just a missing person. She was a woman who had been planning to escape from her husband. The question was whether she had gotten away in time, or if David had stopped her first. Detective Rodriguez was drinking his morning coffee when the phone rang. It was Friday morning and Rebecca Thompson had been missing for 7 days. The voice on the phone belonged to Officer Williams from the fraud department. He had news that would change everything Rodriguez thought he knew about the case. Rebecca Thompson's credit card had been used. Yesterday at 3 p.m, someone bought gas in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The purchase was for $35, and the card was used with the correct PIN number. This meant Rebecca was alive or someone had stolen her card and knew her secret number. Rodriguez felt his stomach drop. For the past week, he had been building a case against David Thompson. All the evidence pointed to David hurting his wife and hiding her body somewhere. But if Rebecca was alive and using her credit card, then David might be telling the truth. Rodriguez drove to the gas station in Albuquerque. It was a 4-hour drive from Denver, but he needed to see the security footage himself. The gas station owner was helpful and showed Rodriguez the video from yesterday afternoon. There on the screen was a woman who looked exactly like Rebecca Thompson. She was wearing jeans and a red sweater, just like the clothes David said Rebecca was wearing when she left home. Her hair was the same length and color. She moved like Rebecca walked. But something about the video bothered Rodriguez, even though he could not figure out what it was. The woman in the video seemed to know exactly where she was going. She did not look around or seem confused. She filled up a blue Honda Civic and paid inside the store. The car matched the description of Rebecca's car that was still missing. She was alone and seemed calm. Rodriguez asked the store clerk if he remembered the woman. The clerk was a young man named Bobby who worked the afternoon shift. He said the woman seemed normal, but she paid for her gas with a credit card and then bought a candy bar with cash. He thought that was strange because most people use the same payment method for everything. Rodriguez asked Bobby if the woman said anything. Bobby remembered that she asked him what day it was. When he told her it was Thursday, she seemed surprised. She looked at her watch and then at her phone like she was confused about the time. Rodriguez got copies of the security video and drove back to Denver. On the way, he called David Thompson and asked him to come to the police station again. David sounded tired when he answered the phone. He had been getting calls from reporters who heard about Rebecca's disappearance. He agreed to come in that afternoon. At the police station, Rodriguez showed David the security footage. David watched the screen carefully. His face showed many different emotions. First, he looked happy because his wife was alive. Then he looked confused because she was so far away. Finally, he looked hurt because she had not called him. David told Rodriguez that the woman in the video was definitely Rebecca. He recognized the way she walked and the clothes she was wearing, but he did not understand why she was in New Mexico or why she had not come home. He asked if Rebecca was in some kind of trouble that would make her run away. Rodriguez did not answer David's question. Instead, he asked David where he was yesterday afternoon. David said he was at work until 5 o'clock and then picked up his children from school. He had receipts and witnesses to prove it. There was no way David could have been in New Mexico. The next day brought more confusing news. Rebecca's credit card was used again. This time it was at a motel in Santa Fe, New Mexico. She rented a room for one night and paid with her card. The motel clerk remembered her because she seemed very tired and asked for a room far away from the highway. Rodriguez called the Santa Fe police and asked them to check the motel room. They found evidence that someone had stayed there, but nothing that would help identify them. The bed had been slept in, and there were towels in the bathroom. But there were no fingerprints or personal items left behind. 2 days later, the credit card was used again at a diner in Colorado Springs. This was only 2 hours away from Denver. Rodriguez drove there immediately and talked to the waitress who served Rebecca. The waitress was an older woman named Patricia Mills who had worked at the diner for 15 years. She remembered Rebecca clearly because of how strange she acted. Patricia said Rebecca ordered a chicken sandwich and coffee but barely touched the food. She kept checking her phone and looking out the window like she was waiting for someone. Patricia told Rodriguez something that gave him chills. Rebecca asked her what day it was, just like she had asked the gas station clerk. When Patricia said it was Sunday, Rebecca looked at her phone again and seemed confused. She left a $20 tip for a $12 meal and hurried out of the diner. Rodriguez asked Patricia if Rebecca seemed scared or upset. Patricia thought about it and said Rebecca seemed more confused than scared, like she was not sure where she was or what she was supposed to be doing. Rodriguez drove back to Denver with more questions than answers. The security footage from all 3 locations clearly showed Rebecca Thompson. She was alone and seemed to be traveling freely. No one was forcing her to do anything. But her behavior was strange and inconsistent. Why would Rebecca run away and then use her credit card where police could track her? Why did she keep asking what day it was? Why was she traveling in a circle that seemed to be bringing her back toward Denver? And most importantly, why had she not contacted her children or anyone else to let them know she was safe? Rodriguez sat in his office late that night, looking at a map. He put red pins in all the places where Rebecca had been seen. The pattern made a rough circle around Colorado and New Mexico. It looked like Rebecca was either lost or following some kind of plan that only she understood. Rodriguez had been a detective for 15 years, but he had never seen a case like this. Usually, missing people either came home quickly or were found dead within a few days. Rebecca seemed to be alive and moving around freely, but she was not coming home. Something was very wrong, but Rodriguez could not figure out what it was. Detective Rodriguez knew he needed help with the technical side of the case. He called Officer James Wright, who worked with computers and phones for the police department. Wright was a young man who understood technology better than anyone else. Rodriguez knew. Wright came to Rodriguez's office the next morning carrying a laptop and several thick folders. He had been working all night on Rebecca Thompson's phone records and digital information. What he found was impossible to explain. Rebecca's phone had been turned off since the day she disappeared. The phone company showed no activity for 7 days. But yesterday something strange happened. The phone suddenly started working again. It began sending location signals to cell phone towers. Wright showed Rodriguez a map on his computer screen. Red dots marked every place where Rebecca's phone had sent a signal. The problem was that the phone was sending signals from 3 different cities at the same time. According to the data, Rebecca's phone was in Denver, Colorado Springs, and Santa Fe all on the same day. Rodriguez stared at the map. He knew this was impossible. A phone could not be in 3 places at once. Someone was playing games with the investigation, but he did not understand how or why. Wright had more strange news. Rebecca's phone had started sending text messages to David Thompson. The messages were short and simple, but they contained information that worried Rodriguez. One message said the police were getting close to something. Another message told David to stop looking for her. The problem was that these messages contained details about the police investigation. Someone sending these texts knew exactly what Rodriguez was doing and where he was going. Wright said the messages were coming from Rebecca's phone, but the technical data showed they were being sent through the internet, not through regular phone towers. Rodriguez asked Wright what this meant. Wright explained that someone with very good computer skills was controlling Rebecca's phone remotely. They could make it look like the phone was anywhere they wanted. They could send messages and make it seem like Rebecca was the one sending them. Rodriguez felt a chill run down his spine. Someone was watching the investigation very closely. Someone knew every move he made and every place he went. This was not just a missing person case anymore. Someone was trying to control what he thought and what he did. Wright pulled out another folder filled with papers. He had been checking Rebecca's email and social media accounts. Someone had been using these accounts too. Rebecca's Facebook page showed that she had checked in at restaurants and hotels all over Colorado and New Mexico. But the check-ins were happening at times when the security cameras showed Rebecca was somewhere else. The email account was even stranger. Rebecca had supposedly sent emails to her work friends saying she was taking time off to think about her marriage. She sent another email to her mother saying she was safe but needed space. The problem was that these emails were sent from computers that belonged to the police department. Rodriguez felt his heart start beating faster. Someone inside the police department was involved in Rebecca's disappearance. Someone with access to police computers was sending fake emails and controlling her phone. Rodriguez did not want to believe it, but the evidence was clear. Wright said he could trace exactly which computer had been used to access Rebecca's accounts. The trail led to a computer terminal on the 3rd floor of the police station. Rodriguez knew that floor well. It was where the detectives worked, including his own partner. Detective Lisa Chen. Rodriguez asked Wright to keep this information secret while he figured out what to do next. Wright agreed, but he looked scared. He had never been involved in a case where police officers might be the criminals. Rodriguez spent the rest of the day thinking about what he had learned. Someone in his own department was helping to cover up Rebecca's disappearance. The question was who and why. Rodriguez trusted most of the people he worked with, but now he had to suspect everyone. That evening, Rodriguez decided to follow David Thompson. He wanted to see if David was meeting with anyone or doing anything suspicious. Rodriguez parked across the street from the Thompson house and waited. At 8 o'clock, David came out of his house and got in his car. Rodriguez followed him carefully, staying far enough back so David would not notice. David drove to a restaurant on the other side of town and parked in the back parking lot. Rodriguez watched as David walked toward the restaurant entrance. But instead of going inside, David walked around to the side of the building where it was dark. Rodriguez saw another person waiting there. It was hard to see clearly, but the person looked like a woman. Rodriguez got out of his car and moved closer. He hid behind another car and watched David talking to the woman. They seemed to know each other well. The woman handed David a manila envelope. David opened it and looked at the papers inside. Then he gave the woman a hug that lasted too long. Rodriguez tried to get a better look at the woman, but it was too dark. She was wearing a dark coat and a baseball cap that hid her face. After a few more minutes of talking, the woman got in her car and drove away. David waited a few minutes, then went back to his own car. Rodriguez wrote down the license plate number of the woman's car. The next day he would run the plates and find out who she was, but he had a terrible feeling that he already knew the answer. As Rodriguez drove home that night, he realized that everything he thought he knew about the Thompson case was wrong. Rebecca might really be missing or hurt. David might be getting help from someone inside the police department. and Rodriguez might be the only person who could figure out the truth before it was too late. The next morning, Rodriguez ran the license plate number he had written down. The car belonged to Detective Lisa Chen, his own partner. Rodriguez stared at the computer screen for a long time. He did not want to believe what he was seeing, but the evidence was right in front of him. Lisa Chen had been his partner for 3 years. They had worked on dozens of cases together. Rodriguez trusted her completely and thought she felt the same way about him. Now he had to face the possibility that she had been lying to him about everything. Rodriguez decided to investigate Chen without letting her know what he was doing. He started by looking at her work schedule for the past month. Chen had been taking a lot of personal time lately. She said she was dealing with family problems, but now Rodriguez wondered if that was true. Rodriguez checked the computer logs that Wright had shown him. The Rebecca Thompson emails had been sent from Chen's computer terminal. The fake social media posts had come from the same computer. Chen had been the one manipulating Rebecca's digital presence to make it look like she was alive and traveling freely. Rodriguez felt sick to his stomach. His own partner had been sabotaging the investigation. She had been feeding him false information and leading him in the wrong direction. But why would Chen help David Thompson cover up his wife's disappearance? Rodriguez needed to find out more about Chen's relationship with David. He started by checking Chen's phone records. What he found made everything clear. Chen and David had been calling and texting each other for months. The messages were not about police business. They were personal and romantic. Rodriguez realized that Chen and David were having an affair. It had started long before Rebecca disappeared. Chen was not just helping David cover up a crime. She was helping him get rid of his wife so they could be together. Rodriguez knew he had to be very careful. Chen was a police detective with access to weapons and information. If she knew that Rodriguez suspected her, she might do something desperate. Rodriguez decided to gather more evidence before confronting her. Rodriguez went back to Maria Santos, who had been Rebecca's friend at work. He asked Maria if Rebecca had ever mentioned anything about David having an affair. Maria looked uncomfortable, but finally admitted that Rebecca had suspected David was seeing someone else. Maria said Rebecca had found strange phone numbers in David's call history. She had also found receipts for restaurants and hotels that David claimed were for work meetings. Rebecca was starting to put the pieces together before she disappeared. Rodriguez asked Maria if Rebecca had ever mentioned anything about corrupt police officers. Maria looked surprised by the question. She said Rebecca had not talked about police, but she had been worried that David had friends who might help him if she tried to divorce him. Rodriguez realized that Rebecca had been closer to the truth than anyone knew. She suspected David was cheating, and she was afraid he would use his connections to hurt her in a divorce. What she did not know was that David's girlfriend was a police detective who could help him make his problems disappear. Rodriguez spent the next 2 days watching Chen carefully. She acted normal at work, but Rodriguez noticed she was nervous. She kept checking her phone and seemed distracted during their conversations. She also asked a lot of questions about the Thompson case that seemed designed to find out what Rodriguez knew. On Friday afternoon, Rodriguez made his move. He told Chen he had new information about Rebecca Thompson and asked her to meet him at the Thompson house. Chen agreed to come, but Rodriguez could tell she was suspicious. Rodriguez arrived at the Thompson house first and waited for Chen in his car. When she arrived, Rodriguez watched her walk to the front door. Instead of knocking, she used a key to let herself in. David was not supposed to be home. Rodriguez realized that Chen had her own key to the house. Rodriguez waited a few more minutes, then followed Chen inside. He found her in the kitchen talking on her phone. When she saw Rodriguez, she quickly hung up and tried to act casual. But Rodriguez could see the fear in her eyes. Rodriguez told Chen that he knew about her relationship with David. He knew about the fake emails and the manipulated phone records. He knew she had been sabotaging the investigation from the beginning. Chen's face went white, but she did not try to deny it. Instead, Chen pulled out her gun and pointed it at Rodriguez. She told him he had made a big mistake by coming there alone. She said she had worked too hard to let him ruin everything now. Rodriguez realized that Chen was more dangerous than he had thought. Chen told Rodriguez that Rebecca Thompson was never coming home. She said Rebecca had been asking too many questions and getting too close to the truth. David had wanted to just divorce Rebecca, but Chen convinced him that would be too risky. Rebecca knew too much about their affair and David's other secrets. Rodriguez asked Chen where Rebecca was. Chen smiled but did not answer. She told Rodriguez that he would never find Rebecca because she had made sure the body would never be found. Rodriguez felt sick as he realized that Rebecca had been dead all along. Chen kept her gun pointed at Rodriguez while she called David on her phone. She told David to come home immediately because they had a problem. Rodriguez knew he was in serious trouble, but he tried to stay calm and think of a way out. While they waited for David, Rodriguez tried to get Chen to keep talking. He asked her how long she and David had been planning to kill Rebecca. Chen seemed proud of her plan and wanted to brag about how smart she had been. Chen told Rodriguez that she and David had been lovers for over 2 years. She had helped David hide money and cover up his abuse of Rebecca. When Rebecca started talking about divorce, Chen knew they had to do something permanent. The plan was to make it look like Rebecca had run away voluntarily. Chen used her police connections to create fake evidence that Rebecca was alive and traveling. She manipulated the credit card records and phone data to support the story. She even had an undercover officer who looked like Rebecca appear in the security camera footage. Rodriguez was amazed by how elaborate the deception had been. Chen had used every tool available to police officers to create a false trail. She had access to technology and resources that regular criminals could never use. That was why the evidence had seemed so confusing and impossible. Chen told Rodriguez that Rebecca's body was buried in a remote location where no one would ever find it. She and David had killed Rebecca on the night she supposedly left for Phoenix. They had been planning the murder for weeks and had prepared alibis and cover stories. Rodriguez heard a car pull into the driveway. David was coming home, and Rodriguez knew his situation was about to get much worse. Chen told Rodriguez to move to the living room where they could watch for David through the front window. But as Rodriguez looked out the window, he saw something that surprised him. David was not alone. He was with several other people who looked like police officers. Rodriguez could see the distinctive blue uniforms and the police cars parked across the street. Chen saw the same thing and started to panic. She did not understand why the police were there. She thought her plan had been perfect, and no one suspected her. Chen ran to the back door trying to escape, but more police officers were waiting in the backyard. Rodriguez realized that someone else had been watching the case. Someone had figured out what Chen was doing and had set up their own trap. As the police officers entered the house, Rodriguez saw a familiar face among them. It was Agent Sarah Williams from the FBI. She was wearing a bulletproof vest and carrying official federal identification. Agent Williams told Chen to put down her weapon and surrender peacefully. Chen looked confused and defeated, but she dropped her gun and raised her hands. Agent Williams explained to Rodriguez what had really happened. Rebecca Thompson was not dead. She was an undercover FBI agent who had been investigating police corruption in Denver. Her real name was Rebecca Martinez, and she had been working to expose officers who were taking bribes and covering up crimes. Rebecca's assignment was to investigate Detective Lisa Chen, who was suspected of helping criminals avoid prosecution in exchange for money and favors. Rebecca's marriage to David Thompson was part of her cover story, but she had discovered that David was genuinely abusive and corrupt. When Rebecca realized that David and Chen were planning to kill her, she contacted her FBI handlers. They decided to fake her disappearance to catch Chen and David in the act of covering up a murder. The credit card usage and phone signals had been part of an FBI operation to make Chen think her plan was working. Rodriguez felt his head spinning as he tried to understand everything Agent Williams was telling him. The woman he had been trying to find was actually a federal agent. The evidence that had confused him so much was fake, but it was fake evidence created by the FBI, not by Chen. Agent Williams told Rodriguez that the FBI had been watching him throughout the investigation. They knew he was honest and dedicated, but they could not tell him the truth because they were not sure who else in the Denver Police Department was corrupt. They had to let Rodriguez investigate naturally while they gathered evidence against Chen. David Thompson was arrested and charged with domestic violence conspiracy and attempted murder. Detective Lisa Chen faced federal charges for corruption, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit murder. The FBI investigation revealed that Chen had been helping criminals for years, in exchange for money and personal favors. Rebecca Martinez continued working as an undercover FBI agent after the case was closed. She specialized in public corruption cases and helped send several other corrupt police officers to prison. Rodriguez learned that she had been in protective custody during the entire time he was looking for her. Rodriguez requested a transfer to a different department after the case ended. He said he needed time to rebuild his trust in the system and his fellow officers. The Denver Police Department launched a major investigation that resulted in the firing or arrest of 12 officers connected to Chen's corruption network. Rodriguez never forgot the case that taught him that sometimes the most unbelievable truth is hiding right in front of you. He learned that corruption can exist anywhere, even among people you trust completely. But he also learned that there are still people fighting to protect the innocent and uphold justice, even when it means risking their own lives.